influenced by a lot of those same people that were around. How are you? Found impact. I don't like that. Are you busy yet?
Aragon.
How you doing? How are you doing? You were bright and sunny on this gloomy day. Since Christmas is not great for our kids. Are you tired?
I'm not taking anything off. You're just gonna stay in her scarf. It's worse than
They moved my office out here.
So my son graduated, my daughter graduated.
Horses eat alone.
Oh my, you just reminded me.
I love it.
That is what my grandfather used to say. He used to say hay is for horses. That 2 years totally took me back. Oh my goodness, I hadn't thought about that in years.
I have never had this room cool. I love it.
I'm not taking
Usually,
this
it's
off.
usually the hottest room.
Jerry got it this morning, he said it is 60 degrees in the house, I said, I know that's what I said it up.
Yeah. We do our 64 at night.
Chilling, chilling.
Both air conditioning and heat.
I said, were you cold while you were sleeping? No.
Maybe I'll do that way back.
Did you wake me up at 6:30 to tell me that?
Actually, when I'm sleeping, it makes me sleep.
How are you?
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sure, it's my pleasure. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, good, good.
Our bus conversation.
Yes.
There you go. We're working. I have no idea. Just this whole system we have now with we can.
Good to see you. In person.
But
Very good. That's and I'll take a little bit of that. My brother would say, I went to school with a guy named Ass Kickington. Again, you and I talked with us again about relationships. It's
we could just, and I know you were interested in having a copy of that was my understanding.
well,
I still think that could be.
and then I was going to share it with my people, and I was debating about when I was going to share it.
I love the fact that it's open conversation, which is a good thing. All one goal. Oh, I truly appreciate it. Because it's so funny, especially people like that who it hits in their mind and go, buddy, what do you think about it? You just happen to know I'm not on the agenda, but I'll be glad to see it. Can you stand up to me?
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Did she want to show the whole thing?
That's right,
Yeah, your
Oh,
whole
okay.
talk.
I told them they were all asking me where I went, and I checked out. I said, I haven't seen.
From my other
Oh, they're doing
The same thing as when I
So I left. I literally all my clients called me too, and I had my voicemail said I'm on personally and lovely, basically. Hell,
Well, that gives us a little bit of time to.
my wife doesn't get
That's
over
right,
it.
so you take that.
Well, it was, I told my staff in the office, I said, if big things in, there's some serious, call me on the phone. Because I said, I cannot deal with it other than the fact that I might need to take pictures of my son killing a deer or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we do. Yeah.
Last time, he's an Air Force EOD. He's moved out last summer. He was on Trump's team.
Hey, Lisa.
How are you?
How are you?
Oh,
Good. It's good to see you.
yeah, he's
How was your Thanksgiving? That's
It's very obvious.
I'm sorry.
It's so funny because my daughter.
better, but it could have been.
My sense of humor.
What about you?
It was lovely. We went to
Probably gonna
we went to New York.
fly 6 months
Yeah,
and
I've
be a trainer.
got family up there. And so
We are a few minutes late. Sorry about that, everyone. Had a few pieces of paper we needed to get in place. Dr. Taylor, we had talked about amending and moving one of the items, but Mr. Royal is here now, so we'll be able to do the items in order. So we will start with TL1 standards, heavy equipment operations adoption.
Yes, this first item is a request to adopt the Georgia Standards of Excellence for 2 courses, the Introduction to Heavy Equipment and Heavy Equipment Operations for through completion of the locally developed career pathway course process. Toombs County School System, along with multiple local and regional businesses, industry partners, and post-secondary institutions collaborated to create a secondary pathway designed to help students transition smoothly into an on-demand heavy equipment operations career. This career pathway is designed to give all students the opportunity to complete the 3 sequence pathway courses in heavy equipment operations. Through several meetings, industry guided the work of specific skill sets and technical concepts students needed to complete during these courses. In addition to local construction industry partners, Southeastern Technical College, Construction Education Foundation of Georgia, and Toombs County Schools. All of these partners were involved in the determination and identification of curriculum standard content for these courses. These courses were approved by the board at the last meeting, November 2021, and have been posted for 30 days review and comment.
Okay, I have mentioned this to several school systems, and there's several that are interested in it, so I'm glad it's here. So any comments, questions, or concern that the committee may have?
I think it's great. I'm glad we're moving this way, and thank you so much. Any comments from CTAE on that?
We had some folks that made some comments on the 30-day posting period, and for the most part, it was in the 95% plus range of all strongly agree or agree. There's a couple that were, I think there were 3 respondents on, which was the most that marked something disagree, but the GSE build on students' prior knowledge. Well, this survey is kind of a generic survey for all courses. Well, it's kind of hard to build on prior knowledge and heavy equipment if you've ever had a course before. So they disagree that it builds on prior knowledge because the kid hasn't had any kind of prior experiences in elementary school or middle school. Well, it's the first time they've ever had the opportunity to do it. So sometimes a couple of these questions are skewed when it comes to our highly specific CTAE programs. But we did have a number of folks who just flat out don't know. And there would be a question that would require them to know whether or not these core standards are consistent with national standards in that career area. That's kind of a hard one for the public to go about because it's just not something that they're going to be involved in on a daily basis. So 11 people responded that they just did not know. But for the most part, everybody else is strongly agree or agree.
Okay.
I will say this, that how, with the technical colleges, the conversations that y'all are having with them as we move forward to these courses that can either articulate or move on when ready, so that's not it now, but it's phenomenal because kids in our area are starting to look at these things with construction and heavy equipment. So I just can't thank you enough for the doors that it's opening in these areas.
Any other comments? If not, then we will plan to move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Item number 2, standard, personal finance, and economics adoption.
So at the August 2021 State Board meeting, Superintendent Woods recommended an amendment to State Board of Education Rule 160-4-2-.48 high school graduation requirements to grant students the option of completing either the economics course or personal finance course to fulfill the 1/2 unit of the economics graduation requirements. The State Board proposed the establishment of a review committee to review the economics course standards and work on strengthening the scope and scale of personal finance standards contained therein. This review committee was established and included board members, legislators, content area teachers, and business industry experts in the areas of finance and economics. The review committee was facilitated by the Georgia Council on Economic Education, They met and included proposed changes to the current economics course standards that increase personal finance standards within the course without affecting the integrity of the economic standards. This course was approved for posting at the State Board's November 2021 meeting and has been posted for 30 days public review and comment.
Okay, and I know there's several that have comments they would like to make, so just to make it easier, I'm just gonna go in order and start. Mr. Long, if you have a comment, and we'll just come around the dais.
Forgot we don't have microphones anymore. No, ma'am, I do not have this time.
Okay, Ms. Rice.
Well, I think, I mean, I served on this committee and it was great, and I think Matt, I think we got some calls, but I think Lisa probably has it more contained because she has talked, so I'm just gonna pass and
Okay.
defer on a couple of things. It's not anything major, but it's just worth having a conversation about among the group of what we heard. We got some great feedback on the courses. We had some people that asked about a few key things, and they wanted to understand a little bit better what one thing meant and how it might have unintended consequences, but it's just a couple of things. But I thought as a board, we probably should just hear what they.
Mr. Royal, did you have anything you, Mr. Johnson? Okay, Ms. Kinnamore, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, there are, thank you. There were some comments, emails that came to me regarding the standards and different wording that we were discussing with Superintendent Woods. One of the things that was stand out was where it talks about scarcity and SS EF1 standard, and it talks about scarcity being a permanent. Let me read it exactly. It says, explain that scarcity is a basic permanent condition that exists because unlimited wants exceed limited productive resources. And that stood out to me because scarcity is not a permanent condition. It is a condition, but it's not permanent. And that's one of the things there. And then where it talks about capital gains as income, you know, capital gains is within your portfolio, but it is not associated with your basic income that you're earning while you're working at a job. So and that needs to be looked at as well. And then where it talks about equity in there, what is the definition of equity within this particular within these particular standards? What is the definition? What does it mean when they're talking about equity? There will be equal opportunity, but there will not always be equitable outcomes for everyone. So I just want to make sure that all of this is tightened up and that we have a clear understanding of what is being set forth in the different standards in personal finance as well as micro and macro.
Do you know which standard is that talks about capital gains?
Let's see. I think it's
As a point of reference to that when we get to that standard, I'm trying to see.
and SSEPF 2 and A, up under A.
Can you read that, Lisa, from the?
Okay, compare different types of income, including hourly wages, salary, tips, independent contractor services, Form 1099, dividends, and capital gains.
But Matt, we discussed that, capital gains was discussed at some point. So is that a valid place to have that in there as an income? Because that's.
I think so. Capital gains is an income.
Okay, in the fact that somebody's investing or whatever with,
Yeah.
okay, so you would break it, so in guidelines, it could be, in guidelines, it would be a correctable thing about investments and all with capital gains.
You know, our teacher notes.
A teacher knows.
Okay,
Okay,
would
that
be
makes
good.
sense
That would be good there.
Okay. And then the equity, where was that one? I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't get
Let's
that.
see, okay. I'll have to come back and get back.
I think I see it on SSBF4. See?
Superintendent, which one did you say?
It's on page 4. of your document.
SSEF4.
It's
Yeah.
Okay.
SSEF4. I think it would be B, where I'm seeing it.
Oh, analyze how command, market, and mixed economic systems answer the 3 basic economic questions. What to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, to prioritize various social and economic goals such as security, freedom, security, equity, growth, efficiency, price, stability, full employment, and sustainability.
So what was the email, Ms. Kenmore, what was it they were talking about,
The
equity?
definition. Without-
Those are you defining as equity in a house or something of that nature?
Yeah,
That might be
I think it's referring to financial.
Financial equity.
Yeah.
That probably needs to be also. in-
Well,
I think that could be corrected in a, I mean, as you get into the guidelines or the teacher notes, because
We talked about.
I know, I remember that, yeah.
Equity in your home, because we
Yes.
talked about your
Yes.
largest asset is your home.
And
I think that's.
Just wanna make sure it doesn't
Equity
get
in a home.
spent in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
You know, just to make sure we have it confined with what we want in the standards and want to be conveyed to our students.
I think that gives clarity to what
Mhm.
we were talking about, so
Yeah.
I just feel like that those kind of things as a group collectively, we need to have a discussion about, and as I said, Lisa had already had some discussion, I think, prior to that. So, I'm good with the clarity. Richard, what did you think about the?
Well, again, I don't have a, preference. I mean, if we want to look at it, I know public comment closed down yesterday. We can move forward and make changes. Again, like I said, as long as it's not too much structural change, we can go ahead and adopt and just make the change. But if you feel that this is going to be something more extensive, then we would have to repost. So I think, Dr. Taylor, that's correct in my
We
assessment.
would like
Is
to
that
repost
correct?
if we made substantive changes, yes.
Pardon?
Yes, we would repost if we made substantive changes.
So do you think any of these changes constitute substantive changes, just cleaning up of language?
So for clarity, as I understood it, the language referred to capital gains as income was stated that it could be clarified in teacher notes, and the same was stated to the definition of equity. And so it sounds like we're landing here on the scarcity as the permanent condition. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, that one to me looks like we would be looking at changing what the standard says in a sense, so it may be. But I'll refer to the founding council.
I mean, with the scarcity, again, my recommendation would be just be simply to go back to the original standard and definition on A.
Ms. Betty, if I may,
Yes.
my suggestion would be to approve as presented and then add context and teacher notes.
But the standard for scarcity, I mean, the current standard, I think, as Superintendent Wood was saying, I think the current standard would be better than what we have in the proposed change.
Well, I think it can be done, kind of going back, because you said,
Yeah.
explain that scarcity is a basic instead of permanent condition. We
Right.
said, explain scarcity as a basic condition that exists when unlimited wants exceed limited productive resources.
Right,
So
and that's
you've
the
got a
current
permanent
standard.
condition exist, because, we just flipped it a little bit, we said because, but you could put that same thing in, it reads the same way. Do you see what I'm saying? Go back to the original standard that Superintendent Woods is saying, and it's clear, it's a little bit clearer than flipping it, saying unwanted because of so-and-so.
Mhm.
Does that make sense, Matt? Because it's what they were talking about, they weren't trying to say it's permanent all,
The intent was try to explain the content.
exactly. So,
That was the intent, is try to understand the wants and supplies and.
exactly. So if he did that, if we tweak the wording, the rearranging of the words over there, it's saying the same thing as that first standard.
I just, I'm fine with making a few minor changes
too.
as long as we don't have to
Change.
repost and go
I
through
agree.
the process again.
I agree.
So I think we need advice on what changes suggestions versus causing a reposting.
So Dr. Taylor, what can we do that would not cause us to have to repost
Give clarity,
and give clarity to the
standard.
the ones they had questions about? We know capital gains and equity, but for this one, the scarcity.
So are you proposing to go back to the original standard?
No, basically it's the same, we're actually changing an element, and what I would call it. Because you're looking at, out of SSE,
SSF1A.
where you have what would be the element of A. So what you're looking at is keeping element A in the original document instead of making a change that is now existing in the proposed change.
That one should not require.
Yeah, I mean, because you're basically, we're not making a change at all.
I don't think it will. I will confirm with Stacy, but I don't think it will.
It's saying the same thing, we just flipped the words in a different.
Yeah, well, I mean, you recognize, I mean, as far as saying permanent, but I mean, you're looking at just defining what scarcity is. And to be honest, it's the definition that probably I used when I was teaching it back in the 1990s, so.
Okay. All right. So anyone else have any comments, questions? Mr. Donaldson, Dr. J,
As I said, I'm fine with minor changes as long as it doesn't involve.
and you've got those noted, Dr. Taylor?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So with those.
Again, is there anything else?
Yeah,
I mean,
anything else in the,
I agree with my colleagues, I'm fine with that.
And again, we can look at whatever we need to look at clarity and defining, we can.
I think it's ready to go.
Get your notes.
all right,
Listen, please.
and with the minor tweaking of words or whatever, we'll move this to the consent agenda.
Yeah, I mean, my original request to kind of go back and look at this was that we didn't separate these courses out, that we provided a more robust personal finance, content. And I think we've met that goal, and I'm glad that now all students will still take this course before they graduate, and they'll get an elevated amount of personal finance, but it doesn't do that at the expense of a robust study of economics in this context, so I think we ought to let it go. I'm very happy with it.
Great. Any other comments on, okay,
I agree.
all right, we will move on to number 3, State Board Rule 160-5-3. -.17, use of alternative vehicles for the transport of specified student groups.
Yes, so Senate Bill 159 from the 2021 legislative session expanded the definition of vehicles that can be used to transport students under certain conditions. Students who have transportation needs documented in their individualized education program, or may currently lack, or during the previous academic year, lacked a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence as described under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, can be transported to and from school and school-related activities using a vehicle designed by the manufacturer to transport a maximum of 8 students and not less than 5 students. This new rule establishes the minimum standards and requirements, which are delineated separately from requirements of school buses for maintenance, repair, inspection, and use of such vehicles, minimum qualifications of the drivers of such vehicles, and other requirements deemed necessary. This rule was approved by the State Board for initiation at the board's November 2021 meeting and has been posted for 30 days public review and comment.
What? It wasn't.
It wasn't posted.
I'm sorry?
It wasn't approved.
The contracted services rule was not approved. This rule was. So there were 2. There was one for contracted services.
There was one.
We had one that was more in line.
One was full.
This one didn't have any of the.
Yeah.
My pause.
Okay. All right, comments, questions, or concerns about number 3?
Yeah.
Mr. Royal?
I mean, the one part is fun, we posted and didn't pull, so is that the one just point of order on where we're at. We're dealing with that one right now, the one that was not pulled,
Correct.
and then we posted it. And
Yes, sir.
have any comments or any challenges?
All right. Anyone else, comments, questions? If not, we will plan to move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Number 4, State Board Rule, 160-4-8-.05, Guidance Counselors Repeal.
All right, State Board Rule 160-4-8-.05, Guidance Counselors, was adopted in August 2000. We are requesting to repeal this rule in order to replace it with a new rule that incorporates current school counseling practices and protocols. This rule was approved by the State Board for initiation or for repeal at the board's November 2021 meeting and has been posted for 30 days public review and comment.
Any comments, questions, concerns from board members? Any members?
I guess just, Madam Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm confused. This, on item number 3, it said the 160-5-3-.17. The adoption on that, but that's, I guess I'm going back, I remember there being 2 parts, and we tabled the one to have further discussions. Did we table that to January, or did we table,
Right, so we pulled that one and decided to have discussions about what needed to be adjusted in the rule. Based on those discussions, we decided we'd make some adjustments to that particular rule and then bring it back in January.
okay, so we're bringing it back in January.
Yeah. That is our intent, to bring that one back in January.
That's where, thank you.
Okay, for number 4, does anyone have any comments, questions about the repeal of this rule? If not, we'll try to move it to the consent agenda also tomorrow.
3 and 4 will go for separate vote.
Can Dr. Wall refresh us on the new things that were added to that, though, while we made that, the change with the councils? I know we expanded some of those things, and I'm trying, because there was a difference between.
And I think they'll probably be addressed in number 5.
Oh, okay.
That's
All right.
adoption.
And you said, Dr. Taylor, number 3 needs to be pulled for a separate vote?
Yes.
Yes, number 3 will be a separate vote. Okay, number 4, move to consent. Number 5, State Board Rule, School Counseling Adoption.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, item number 5, so again, Rule 160-4-8-.05, Guidance Counselors was recently, or just requested for repeal to be replaced with this rule for school counseling. This new rule will support the implementation of comprehensive school counseling programs that would deliver holistic and measurable services to all students. This rule was approved by the board at the November meeting for initiation and has been posted for 30 days public review and comment.
All right, comments, questions, or concerns about number 5?
I guess I'm back on this comprehensive plan before, and Dr. Wall, she's gone. Okay, well, is this gonna be the mix with CTAE and the regular counselors? You know, we've talked about how one is directed in one place for students academically and the other academically on a CTAE path. Will those 2 bridge together as they work, or will that one person now be asked to fulfill both of those tasks?
We have Ms. Sheila McMahon, who is our guidance counselor
Okay.
support person, to
All right.
provide some clarity.
Duh.
It's okay, I'm incognito because I'm still fairly new, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna stand because I've
Say,
seen
you
people
can-
when I talk. So I'm a practicing school counselor for 21 years, both at high school, middle school, and elementary. The beauty of being in CTAE is that our job is both guidance and counseling. That has been since its inception. What this new rule does is it brings us kind of into the 21st century. Guidance counselors has a different connotation, more clerical, not as career-oriented and whole child-oriented, but a comprehensive school counseling program and a professional school counselor makes sure that all of our children are taken care of, and so that we can provide them with an expanded number of post-secondary opportunities.
The that answer your question, Ms. Rice?
Yes.
Any other comments or questions about number 5? Plan to move this to the consent agenda. And number 6, Title 20 waiver.
Item number 6, Long County Schools is seeking a waiver of the portion of the Official Code of Georgia annotated Section 20-2-51 C4A, which provides that no person who has an immediate family member serving as a school principal or assistant principal may serve on the local board of education, or district staff. This law also stipulates that if the LEA's initial fall enrollment count conducted in 2009 pursuant to state code does not exceed a full-time equivalent count of 2,800, the State Board of Education shall be authorized to waive its rule and law upon request of a local board of education or an individual attempting to qualify to run for the local board of education. The spouse of a current local board of education member in Long County Schools is being hired to serve as the special education director for Long County. Long County Schools had an FTE of less than 2,800 and is requesting a waiver to allow this current board member to retain eligibility to continue to serve for the remainder of their term in office, which ends in December 2024.
Comments, questions on number 6?
I would just make one, it's in my district and I've talked to everybody involved, so I think it's a good thing.
Okay. All right. Plan to move this to the consent agenda. Number 7, 2022 State Board of Education meeting calendar.
This is just the State Board of Education's bylaws require the board to adopt a calendar of meetings for the upcoming year at the last meeting of the calendar year. So that is what presented before you.
All right. Does anyone have any questions about the calendar? Move that to the consent agenda tomorrow. That concludes all of our agenda items.
Let me just give some update on the, as there were two, obviously there were the two things that dealt with this charter transportation services. This one, and then there was 160-5-3.17 and 160-5-3.02. And 02 was the one we spent the most time on in relation to rideshare. And that's the one we tabled until January. We've got some feedback. I know Chairman Sweeney, Martha Zoller, myself, and some staff had a call at Schofield and had some discussion on this. Then also had, I know Scott Johnson and myself both had, we got too many Scotts, too many Mikes and too many Scotts. Had some discussions on, with some legislators on, because there was some differencing in what was thought of a legislative intent on this, so went straight to some of the legislators that were involved in this and talked to them personally, not say I heard this, ask personally what the thoughts were and some of the discussion on this, and it was the language in the original bill was in there to exclude rideshare. And then that was taken out in the House. And it was purposely taken out in the House. And one of the House members that worked on this was very adamant that it should stay out of it because that was purposely taken out. And then talking with the senator who drafted legislation, his intent with that being in there was to make sure that what we've all said is that a student is not picked up by a random Uber driver at the curb and sent home, and to do that. And that the intent of the legislation in regards to that was to open this up, do it in a thoughtful, safe way, and if it can be done without rideshare being in there, that's our prerogative, but the reason that was in there and the purpose of and what they wanted to do was put guide rails up, and those were his words, guide rails up so that it could be done in a safe manner, and that would not be the case, which we all discussed and had our discussions on during our discussion last month. We've gotten some, as early as this morning, I've gotten an email from another person that was very involved in that discussion, some thoughts on our rule and some potential changes to it, and one beefing up a little bit, and then some retracting some of the things we've done a little bit on there. But I think we're headed in a consensus where we can get this done, have it be beneficial to particularly our state schools, those McKinney-Vento children, and then some of those special needs children that have the IEPs that really need this, and would be very helpful to do that in a way that is competitive in the open market and allows people that are companies that are doing this in many, many other states to participate with rules. Just what we need to be very careful of, and everybody agreed on, is the rules of the game need to be the same for whether they're considered under rideshare law or not considered under rideshare law. The rules of the game for all of the people, all the companies participating needed to be equal, and they all had to apply. Part of the challenge is every state defines rideshare differently. For instance, there was some discussion on another state where rideshare companies were using a loophole to get in because their state defines rideshare differently. I mean, that's part of the challenge, to where they're just wanting to make sure that our state and what we do, one, has an equal playing field for everybody that wants to participate. When I say everybody, every company that wants to participate, and that it is done in a safe manner to protect kids, and that there is the traditional, as we know it, Uber and Lyft, where you just randomly contact a driver to pick you up and take you somewhere, that does not qualify, and beyond. I mean, several layers above that. And I assured everybody that I talked to that I was felt comfortable in speaking for the board, that it was unanimous among the board that was the case, and then that was where we felt. So that's some of the work that's going on in this and where we're headed, and obviously we'll be continuing to work towards that. So.
Right, and just make sure, you share the information that you get or emails that you get with the appropriate ones
Yes.
who need it. So when we bring it back in January,
My only concern right now, Madam Chairman, is in reading it. Like I say, I got some of this morning at 7:30, and I think some of it bleeds over into what we just adopted into the .17 in there. I'm going to look at it more, but I just trying to be as transparent, and what don't want to happen is tomorrow we're sitting here scrambling in front of building a consent agenda and having to pull things, and I'll get with you right after this. But in just reading through some of and they're thoughtful. It's not, I mean, I know it's last minute, but it wasn't intended to be last minute. We're making sausage.
Right.
And I did get some pretty thoughtful comments on 1.7 that didn't go through the public process that we've got that we would want to consider. I'll get with you, Madam Chair, after this. So.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
What I'm confused about is I'm looking at the red line version last month. We all agree we don't want Uber to.
Correct.
So it says shall not be authorized to provide by a rideshare network service.
That's in .1. That's in .02. That's not what we just adopted. Was .17. That was part of my confusion, and why I'm bringing this up right now, is because last month what we did, and we did it with good intentions, was we didn't have really any conflict with the .17 because they're really similar. They're parallel documents, and when you're reading, and that's what I was just the sidebar with Mr. Johnson and I were over here. We were talking about this, is they're somewhat parallel documents and bleed over to one another a little bit. I mean, because we're in uncharted territory, and that's where I'm worried right now, and why I just mentioned that. We need to get this right and do this. So, but I know we also have McKinney-Vento in our state schools and some others that can benefit from this. We want to get this out in the appropriate way as soon as we can. And I just revisited, like I say, someone's thoughts from this morning that has been in this business for a long time in other states, that sent me an email this morning with some thoughts on our proposed guidelines, and they're pretty thoughtful. And in this process, I've talked to some people that are doing it in other states and have gotten a lot of insight. You know, Georgia is one of the only 2 states left to do this, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And because some of the states that have done this early are now having to go back and redo some of the work they're doing and tightening up some of the restrictions because of things going on. For instance, I'm not trying to belabor the point or take too much of the committee's time, but I mean, this is just info I've learned in the last couple of days. Lyft is using some loopholes in some states to get in and have and do rideshare, but through some of the loopholes that they've got in their rules. And now they're having to go back and redo some of their rules because they've been on the books for 10 years. And we've got the benefit of hindsight in this because some states are doing it well, some operators are doing well, some not. And it's like when I was on the phone with one of the lobbyists, I'm just being frank, I told her, I said, I'm not too concerned whether your client or this client or that doesn't like this rule or this rule. Our job as a board is to set policy and put up guidelines, and if your client can adapt to the guidelines we set, great. If they can operate within that, if not, they can either not do it or change their guidelines if it's a board rule that we think best serves the kids and creates a safe environment for them to be transported outside of school transportation. So our job is to call balls and strikes, and whoever they send to the plate's fine. But there were some very thoughtful guidance, I mean, just on, and actually I'm looking back, and that's what I just looked back, and I was looking back at 1.7. It's like, some of the thoughts they gave me are on 0.02 and some are on 1.7. In hindsight, maybe as a board, we should have just held them both together and moved them both at the same time. I don't know. That's why I wanted to have the conversation with the Madam Chairman and see that we get
those, Ms. Petty, if those comments could be sent to the whole board tonight,
Right.
so we can review them and see who they're from, not from a vendor, I'd be glad to look at them.
And if,
Can I make a comment with that? Because we
Yes.
had this discussion also, Mike, as a sidebar, before you went into budget last month. Because what I think happened with us with 1.7 was, it was giving us the definition of the key terms. It was talking about the requirements set
Yeah.
forth in the law. And it sort of gave the rule contained the vehicular regulations. Well, what you had were a little bit more sausage in there stuff.
Yeah.
So we weren't balanced out, Matt, even though we were getting some fundamental things that were key to making this work. So ours passed a little bit smoothly because we didn't have as much sausage to make within that. What they had with budget came out to be more in 02. So you're right, we probably should have meshed this together because policy probably needed to have some of that sausage in with some of this too, so that we'd be on the same page in both areas. But I think maybe I agree with you, if we get an idea of what this is, we can possibly mesh together the best.
so for the Rules Committee members, do you want to have never mind, we've already got that one pulled for the separate vote. So it is already pulled for a separate vote tomorrow for discussion. So we will talk about it. So the others, items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7 will move to consent. That one will be a separate vote anyway, so we can discuss that. And if you'll share the
absolutely,
information with
absolutely,
Dr. Taylor
absolutely.
and everyone, then we can talk about that later. Does anyone else have any comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir?
point of privilege, please, ma'am. We're not gonna have State Schools Committee, ma'am, since I've got everybody here, can I address real quick, please? May I?
Yes.
All right, number one, your beautiful poinsettias in front of me are again from GAB, Georgia Academy for Blind this year. They had a limited supply, but we have a absolutely beautiful one. If you ask me, they're in front of us. I have one more thing, just as a public thanks, I would like to thank Richard and all involved about getting our state schools there. All new teachers are gonna get $2,000. New support staff for the school year will get $500. All returning staff will get a 3% salary incentive, and all part-time staff will receive $500. This is paid for by using the CARES money. I just want to get that out there and thank you publicly for helping us retain those folks and recruit those folks because we need them in those special schools. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Anything else? If not, Rules Committee is adjourned.
See if anybody's making out the break. Everybody in here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the District Flexibility and Charter Schools Committee meeting to order. We have 2 action items on the agenda and also a presentation. Ms. Taylor, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Our first item is a request to approve the charter system contracts for Innovative Assessment Demonstration Authority districts for the G-Kids waiver. State law requires each local system participating in the Innovative Assessment Pilot Program to amend their flexibility contracts to reflect the innovative alternative assessment and accountability system that will be utilized during the term of the pilot program. School systems that are a member of the Georgia Measure of Academic Progress, or the GMAP consortium for the 2021-22 school year, are participating in the Innovative Assessment Demonstration Authority pilot and have submitted assurances may waive State Board of Education Rule 160-3-1-.07 2A, allowing them to use GMAP rather than the G-Kids assessment as the designated first grade readiness assessment. The following systems are seeking to amend their contracts to add this waiver: Evans County, Floyd County, and Marietta City Schools.
We've seen this request before, and it's, I believe it's your belief that we've just about brought everybody in under this waiver that needs it.
Yes, we have not received any additional requests, so this should be the last batch.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee members? If not, with hearing no objection, I'll add this to the consent agenda. Item 2.
Item number 2, request to approve Georgia Principles and Standards for Charter School Authorizing. House Bill 430 from the 2017-18 legislative session and signed by the governor in April of 2017 added Code Section 20-2-2063.3, requiring the State Board of Education and the State Charter Schools Commission to jointly establish a code of principles and standards of charter school authorizing to guide local boards of education, the State Board, and the State Charter Schools Commission in meeting high-quality authorizing practices. This code section requires these principles and standards include maintaining high standards for approving charter petitions, establishing high academic, financial, and operational performance standards for charter schools, annually monitoring, evaluating, and reporting charter school progress in meeting academic, financial, and operational performance standards, upholding charter school autonomy and school governance, instructional program implementation, personnel and budgeting, protecting students and holding charter schools accountable for their obligations to all students, and protecting the public interest and holding charter schools accountable for their obligations of governance, management, and oversight of public funds. The Georgia Department of Education has worked with the staff at the State Charter Schools Commission to develop a set of principles and standards for charter school authorizing. If approved, these standards will go into effect in the spring semester with a full year of training and supports and evaluation of authorizer adherence to the standards, which will begin a year later.
So to be clear, these are the principles and standards for authorizing, and the evaluation component will come later.
Correct.
And this has been a collaborative effort between DOE and the State Charter Schools Commission, correct?
That is correct.
Take a minute and look at the principles and standards. I think you'll find them well written.
Mr. Chairman, who was with us, did the collaboration from the State Charter School Commission? Do we know?
Absolutely. You have Ms. Lauren Holcomb.
Oh, okay. Do you have any comments?
We worked really hard on this. There's been, probably for over a year at this point. We had several staff members from our office work on this, along with several staff members from DOE. So we hope that you will approve them so that we can get to the next phase, which is the evaluation, and that's the real meat of it. The standards aren't as meaningful unless you have an evaluation component to go along with it. So thank you for your consideration.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions. I know Tiffany is as well.
Any other questions or comments from committee members? No. Mr.
I'll
Dom.
make sure I understand, so this is the beginning of this, like a summary, and then there's gonna be meat added. Or not?
Well, these are the standards.
So these are essentially the principles that guide, we have 3 different authorizers. You've got the state board, as you know, the state board that authorizes along with local boards of education and the State Charter Schools Commission. So when we work together in terms of a set of principles and standards that would essentially meet the needs for charter schools that are operating under all 3 of those authorizers, then making sure that we at least had the broad standards of what that meant for authorizers and good quality authorizing practices. As we get to the evaluation, right, that will go into some of the details of what does that mean then for authorizers for the charter schools that they authorize.
Okay.
But I kind of agree with what Matt's saying. They're fundamentally things that are gonna be added to this that put meat on the bone. Like, what does maintaining high standards for approving charter positions mean? I mean, so he's saying, so there's gonna be A, B, and C added, right, to those things that.
So you're looking at the actual standards that that are posted?
Well, I saw, yeah, the categories underneath that, yes, okay. I didn't see that, Matt. I think those are there. Did you see those posted?
I guess, okay, I'll
Yeah,
expand a
there
little
are
bit.
a total of 15,
Right.
15 standard principles and standards
Right.
5 categories.
in different categories, that's correct.
I've just never seen anything that's 2 pages, so I'm just curious. It's very short.
Yeah.
What's
wrong?
Yes, so you will, right, in the spring term, you'll get the evaluation sort of measures and tools for you all to approve at that point, and that will flesh out the details of what would be evaluated essentially under each of those categories, yes.
We want to be sure that we are authorizing qualified people and qualified efforts.
Yes, and providing the proper supports, correct.
You know, this drives the application, the whole approval process, the whole conversation. So although this, and you accurately point out, is 2 pages, and thank you for that. It obviously will build this out in a lot more detail when it comes to the application and all of that. Am I right on that?
That is correct, and that will come to you in the spring semester.
This kind of lays out the expectations of what the authorizer will do, and then the evaluation will come along and say, is the authorizer doing that standard?
Right. Right. What's good enough? Right.
And I think Dr. Taylor, correct me if I'm mistaken here, but basically a document as a unified, or it creates a unified set of standards for everyone or all 3 of the authorizers.
Correct.
So that we're all working on the same page.
Correct.
Okay, so you don't have different levels of play.
Right. And thanks to the staff, and I mean, we had a meeting. Lauren, how long ago did we meet?
Oh my gosh, maybe, it was right when you assumed the chairmanship.
Right, it was right after this committee was implemented, and so it's been a while, and they've gotten this done, and I think they've done an excellent job, and this collaboration we want to see continue as we go through the next step, which is obviously going to be a little more complicated, a little more high leverage, I think. But is what's good enough going to look like? But I think they'll come through in fine fashion. Any objection to including this on the consent agenda? Now, these principles and standards are up for approval. Okay, we're within our procedural latitude to approve these at tomorrow's meeting. I just wanted everybody to be clear on that. All right. Ms. Taylor, we have some guests, and I think, I know that's, we'll add this to the consent agenda. And then, what's next?
Yes, with the presentation of the annual report to the State Board of Education by the State Charter Schools Commission. So I will turn over at this point to Ms. Lauren Holcomb, who's the Executive Director of the State Charter Schools Commission.
They have a presentation, and I know there were some requests on the board to hear from Charter Schools Commission, and they were happy to oblige, and we're glad you're here, Lauren.
Okay, hey everyone. Thanks for having me. Okay, I'm making sure
Hey,
my technical tools here work. Okay, they do. All right, well, thank y'all for having me. I'm Lauren Holcomb again. I'm the State Charter Schools Commission Executive Director. I am here to give our annual report to you. This microphone works so much better than any microphone that we use in our office. I'm thrilled by that. But this is actually in law that we give an annual report to the State Board of Education, and I think this is our first time doing it. And that's not because we have been derelict in our duties with the law. It's because the old formation of the Charter Committee had us kind of sitting on the committee, so we regularly gave you updates. So when this committee was reconvened, Chairman DeJarnett and I chatted and agreed that we needed to give you this annual report. So what's in law is that we give you an annual update essentially on the commission's activities and performance of state charter schools. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of the work that we've been doing. So I've categorized this into 4 different areas. So I'll give you an overview of our agency, our portfolio overview, and that's what we call the schools that are under our authorization is our portfolio. State charter school performance, I'm going to tell you how we measure that and how schools are performing, and then I'm going to give you an update on our kind of strategic priorities for this upcoming year. Okay, so the commission, you all probably know, but for those just who maybe aren't familiar, is Georgia's independent statewide charter school authorizer. So what that means is that we are an authorizer at the state level. There's 2 ways that people can come to us to start a charter school. It's either after they have applied to a local board of education and been denied, or if they want to serve a very broad geographic attendance zone. So for example, we've had both of those things happen. We've had schools apply to Atlanta Public Schools, or petitioners apply to Atlanta Public Schools, be denied, and then we act as an appellate agency. We've also had schools that serve the entire state. So for example, Georgia Cyber Academy and Georgia Connections Academy, our 2 virtual schools, are under our portfolio, and it wouldn't make sense for them to apply to every single district in the state for authorization. So our mission is to improve public education by authorizing high-quality charter schools that provide students with better educational opportunities. And I want to explain what we mean by that term, better. So we're really looking at academic performance when I say that. We want to ensure that our schools are giving kids a better opportunity than they would otherwise have in the schools that they're zoned to attend. That is really fundamental to the charter bargain. Y'all probably all know charter schools. The kind of premise behind it is that we want improved performance for that flexibility that they're given. So charter schools can waive laws and rules and regulations, and in exchange for that, we expect that they're going to be getting better performance for the students that are in their schools. We recently adopted a vision that we are very excited about, and I want to share that with y'all today. So our vision is to advance education through innovative and superior charter schools in every community. You'll hear me kind of reference this throughout the presentation. I think we're doing a great job on the innovative and superior piece, just based on our performance framework and the types of schools that we approve. The part that we're really trying to hone in on is serving students in every community, because we have some areas where we have lots and lots of charter schools, and we think that's great to have that choice, but there are many areas of our state where students don't have a choice. So the role of our office is to authorize high-quality schools. We get petitions in. We look at those petitions, we ensure that they're going to be able to meet their obligations and provide students with a great option. We extend autonomy. That's fundamental as a charter authorizer. You're not supposed to overstep really and tell schools how to do things. We just stand back. They give us a plan, we stand back, but we also want to provide support because our schools function as local school systems. So they don't have the support of the Fulton County Board of Education or the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education. So we try to provide training and support and guidance, not to tell them what they have to do, but to give them guidance so that they can do things well. And then lastly, one of the most important functions of an authorizer is to uphold accountability. And we look at school performance in 3 different buckets, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but we look at academics, operations, and finance when we're looking at school performance, and that's aligned with national best practices. We are governed by a board of commissioners, just as y'all govern the Department of Education. We have a board that governs us too. They're nominated by the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, and appointed by all of you. The state board also has an oversight function of our schools because they operate as local education agencies. You have oversight of them. You also have the power to overturn our approval decisions. So you'll probably recall some requests for affirmation of decisions that we've made, which we greatly appreciate. So you can't overturn, if we deny a school, you don't have the authority to overturn it, but if we approve a school and you don't agree with it, you do have the authority to overturn that decision. Okay, so here's a little bit of information about our schools in these different buckets: geography, grade bands, kind of the types of students that we serve, and instructional models. that's a little bit cut off, but I think y'all can see we have 38 schools right now that are operational this year. They're located all over the state, as you can see, kind of from the stars, but we have a lot of schools in the Atlanta area. We have 8 additional schools in the pipeline to open. Most of those are also in the Atlanta area, and then we have 1 school that's working on opening down in Savannah. Of our schools, this just kind of gives you an idea. Of course, most of them are in Atlanta, 25% of them are outside of Atlanta, and 7% are the virtual schools. And one interesting thing about our virtual schools is that they enroll students from every single district in the state. So while it's not kind of reflected on this, there are students in every school system that are enrolled in our virtual schools. So this is just a little bit of information about enrollment trends that we've seen. So last year we had 32,000 students in a state charter school. That has increased this year. We always see increases every year just based on our school's enrollment growth. A lot of times they're adding a grade level or adding a classroom just with their growth patterns that they've contemplated in their petitions. But last year we did see a pretty significant bump in enrollment during the COVID pandemic. So while most school enrollment declined, or public school enrollment declined, I think there was a 3% decline in traditional school enrollment in the state. State charters experienced a 16% enrollment increase, and that is largely driven by our 2 virtual schools, which of course saw a huge increase in interest and demand during the COVID pandemic. This is a little bit of information about demographics. It's very difficult for me to see, but I did just want to note a lot of our schools intentionally are locating in areas with underserved students. So you'll see, especially in the Atlanta area, about half of our schools, and then there's some more that are opening, have gone in and really intentionally located in areas where students are very underserved, economically disadvantaged, educationally disadvantaged, and in need of a choice. Most of our schools serve elementary grade bands. This is not a perfect number to align with the number of schools that we have because some of them serve multiple grade bands. So there's some K-12 schools, some K-8 schools, but the majority of schools are serving elementary and middle grades. We see fewer charter schools that want to serve high school grades. That's just a different animal with the types of services that students are looking for in high school. And then in terms of instructional models, we have, of course, the virtual schools, language immersion, single gender, STEM and STEAM, cultural relevancy, classical. We have some schools that are focused on coding. We recently opened a school this year that is a refugee integration school. So they used to be a program and then opened up a school. They had a population of students in the DeKalb area that are trying to assimilate and learn how to be successful in our schools, and so they opened up a school to serve them. We also have a school that is focused on sports leadership. And I wanted to touch quickly on charter management companies versus freestanding schools. When we hear about charter schools, a lot of times people talk about that they're privately run and run by management companies, and that is the case in some places, but that is not true in Georgia. In Georgia, all charter schools, the law says all charter schools have to be run by a nonprofit governing board. So we don't have any private charter schools in Georgia. We also don't have a lot of management companies. So you'll probably hear bad stories about management companies sometimes in the news. We don't think management companies are necessarily good or bad. We care about performance. If somebody's getting great results for kids, that's what we're focused on. But we really don't have a ton of management companies. In Georgia, we're kind of referred to as a mom and pop state, and that's what they say when you don't have a lot of big management companies in your state. And the national trend that we're seeing is more toward community-based authorizing, not these management companies that come into communities and tell communities what they need. We want to see more kind of homegrown, the community is deciding what it is that they need. Okay, I'll touch on performance. So we measure performance through a system called the Comprehensive Performance Framework. This is also aligned with national best practices. You'll see many states use this. I know DOE has a CPF. I don't know are y'all revising the CPF right now? That our local districts use as well. We measure it in 3 different areas. So academic performance, and the academic performance section of the CPF asks the question, is the school offering students a better opportunity? The financial performance section asks, is the school financially viable? And that information is all derived from school audits. And then the organizational performance section asks, this is essentially measuring the LEA obligations. Is the school doing what they're supposed to do in accordance with the law? Are they effective? Is their governing board doing what they're supposed to do? And are they well run? So these are the academic metrics that we look at. I won't go through every single one. Y'all know what these are, but they're largely looking at CCRPI scores. and components of the CCRPI. We also do a value-added analysis that controls for different student characteristics, and then we take into account the beating the odds analysis. That the value-add analysis and beating the odds analysis are both conducted by the Governor's Office of Student Achievement, and those are just different ways of looking at things that take into account unique student characteristics, like homelessness, for example. We would want to take that into account to compare how is that school serving students with these different circumstances and compare in relation to other schools in the state. I just want to make a note that we look at proficiency and growth equally. So we aren't, if that's great if you have an A on the CCRPI and that you're doing really well in terms of content mastery. We also think it's great if you're growing students faster than the other schools that they would go, because those students came in several grades behind and you moved them faster. That is equally impressive to us and equally important to us. This is just a lot of words on a slide that basically say we don't have academic data for the last year. I know y'all know why, but because of the COVID pandemic, I'm going to give y'all information about the 2019-20 school year. We obviously had disruptions to testing, but I will show you some trends that show you, how academic performance has improved over the past year. But we will next year have some more academic data to share with you. Financial metrics, I'll go through this quickly. We look at both near-term measures and long-term measures. We are not calculating this ourselves. We are relying on auditors to calculate this information. You probably know all schools have to get an annual audit, and charter schools also have to do that, especially as nonprofit organizations. They're subject to that law as well. We contract with auditors, with Malden and Jenkins and other well-known and renowned auditors that our schools can utilize to get these audits, because we think it's important that they use approved auditors that are meeting best practices and standards as well. Most of our schools take advantage of that, and this is how we get the information that we get. But we're looking at near-term measures and also long-term measures. This is financial performance for the past year, 2019 to 2020, looking at schools' performance. You can see just kind of some trends on here. The indicator that most of our schools struggle with is enrollment variance, and that is predicting your enrollment from year to year. And that's obviously extremely important for any school, but especially for charter schools as schools of choice. It's extremely important that they can predict what is their enrollment going to look like from year to year. That's the biggest source of revenue that they have. So we've seen improvement on that, but we still have some room to grow. And we take this data every year after we publish our comprehensive performance framework. We take the data and look at the trends and then see what kind of targeted support can we give to schools to help them improve in these areas.
Could you
Yeah.
back up to that?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that, because the numbers are a little hard to see, but in the example of enrollment variance.
Yep.
What you're telling us there, that 5 schools met
the standard.
at the standard
Yes.
on enrollment variance. 16 were approaching it.
Right.
And then another 12 at the top did not meet.
Yes, and
correct?
so did not meet means that they were outside. We look at all of them within percentages. So that means their enrollment variance was greater than the standard that we had. And that could mean they enrolled a lot more students than they thought they were. It could mean they enrolled a lot fewer students. But we want to measure their ability to accurately project from year to year how many students they're going to enroll.
Thank you.
You good? Okay, operations metrics. This is essentially their LEA obligations. So is the governing board complying with open meetings requirements? Are they, serving students in accordance with student right requirements, that type of stuff, student environment. And we get most of this information through on-site monitoring visits and also from a lot of DOE programs. So like the Federal Programs Division at DOE helps us with this quite a bit. So this is so hard for me to see. So these are the metrics. We have a lot of operational metrics because there's a lot of LEA obligations. This is, I think, one of the things that surprises schools a lot is how extensive their LEA obligations are when they become approved. But this just gives you an idea. It's the same thing. So the yellow is meeting, the white is approaching, and then the green, which is not great on this slide, shows you how schools did not meet. The biggest one that I would say is that 5B measure there, and that is related to policies. So something that we've learned and we're trying to do a better job of this upcoming year is there's always new policies that schools have to know every year. So I think that this one was related to a new bullying policy that came out, and schools were not fully aware of that. So when we went on to on-site monitoring, they didn't have that information. And so we need to do a better job of ensuring at the beginning of the year, as new legislation and new requirements roll out, that schools are aware of that so that they've been informed before we come out and do their on-site monitoring visits. Any questions on this before I move on?
I would love to get a copy of this. This is a
Absolutely, yeah.
great summary.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah, you could, very good,
Yeah,
thanks.
absolutely. Okay, so this is overall performance. It's just the trend chart, basically. I don't know if you can even see that academic line. It's very faint, but academics is the one that we do not have performance for this past year. But I will highlight that in the last year for which we have data, 76% of state charters outperformed their comparison attendance zone. So that could mean that they had better, just a straight better CCRPI score, that their content mastery piece of CCRPI was better, that their student growth part of CCRPI or progress was better, or that they outperformed on that value added or the beating the odds analysis. We also, I should say, do an analysis by both schools, and we started doing a summative school level at the district analysis, but then also a school level analysis. So now that I think DOE and GOSA have started collecting student addresses, this isn't publicly available information, but we're able to drill down to that school level and see where students are actually zoned, their individual zoned school to attend, to compare, is this student getting a better opportunity in a charter school? So you can see the trend is generally up. We're happy about that. We had a little blip there in 2017-18 with our financial metrics, but we have made a lot of improvement in that area. And that is largely due to facilities. Charter school facilities are really, really hard for schools. We had several schools default on their facility obligations in that year, and that really drove that number down. Okay, I'm getting to the end. I'm not boring y'all. These are our priorities for the upcoming year. I wanted to kind of frame our priorities with this report that had recently come out from the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, which is sort of the parent company, parent organization for all authorizers. It's a member organization to kind of share best practices about charter school authorizing. We call it NACSA. So they put out this report in 2019 looking at Georgia's charter school pipeline. And this is looking at both locally approved charter schools and state charter schools, but it kind of helped us frame some of our priorities and highlight some issues for us. So the report found that Georgia has a very diverse portfolio of charter schools. That's something that we should really be proud of. Most of our petitions are freestanding, meaning that they're not associated with a management company or an incubator program or anything like that. They're really homegrown, community-based schools. Most charter petitions don't receive support from an incubator or a fellowship program, so that would not be like a management company. That would be some kind of organization that helps develop charter schools. Like the Georgia Charter Schools Association has an incubator. There are some other outfits that do that. But the ones that are associated with those programs are more successful in getting approved. And then it highlighted some growth challenges for us. It showed that charter school growth in Georgia is increasingly being driven by the commission and not local districts. That's not a surprise to any of us. Over the last 5 years, 3 out of every 4 new charter schools in the state were approved by the commission. So that's just showing more and more schools are approved by the commission and fewer schools are being approved by local districts. In 2013-14, this is an illustration of that. 43% of all new schools were approved by districts, and by 2017-18, no new charter schools were approved by local school districts. So that just illustrates the increased demand at the state level for charter schools. It also illustrates our need for strategic growth to really be intentional about where we're seeing growth. I've showed y'all the majority of places where we're seeing people want to petition is from the Atlanta area, but we're doing a good job of serving kids in Atlanta. We've got a lot of choice in Atlanta, so we really want to do a better job of diversifying geographically and serving kids in areas of the state that don't have a quality choice. So we've taken a couple actions so far, and we have other things that we're planning on doing to kind of help with that strategic growth. So last year, we implemented a couple of board rules to that effect. So we implemented a rule that all of our schools had to have an enrollment cap. So just to be very strategic about growth, we want to ensure that schools that are growing are high-quality schools that, we're only letting the best of the best grow. We also implemented a rule that we would not accept transfer petitions from local districts unless those districts were denying their local schools. So we've seen a lot of local charter schools, locally approved charter schools, want to transfer to the commission. And we are here as that appellate authorizer. If we need to authorize those schools, we will. But we are also believers in local control, and so we want that first right of refusal to be at the local level. And if a local says we don't want the school anymore, then we are here to consider it. But we really want to be that's in alignment with our startup petition rule. So any district or any school that serves a very defined geographic attendance zone has to get a denial at the local level. But it was kind of an oversight that wasn't the case for transfer petitions. So we wanted to align with that startup rule. Another thing that we're working on, which I know Tiffany has talked to you a lot about, is the Authorizer Standards, and we are really hopeful that having that common set of standards will encourage high-quality authorizing practices at the local level. There's a piece in the Authorizer Standards law that allows for local charters in districts that, let me say that a different way. If a local charter school is under a district that does not perform well on the Authorizer Standards for 2 consecutive years, there's an avenue for them to transfer to the commission. So we're excited about that getting rolled out. We hope that just transparency and a common set of standards will improve authorizing around the state. So we're very interested in local authorizers doing quality work. And then geographic diversity, we really want to do a better job of serving students in other parts of the state. We have adopted several priorities within our next petition cycle to look at serving regions of the state that need a choice that don't currently have one. So basically, if you want to locate in an area that already has a lot of charters, the bar is going to be higher for you. We're really trying to encourage people to locate in areas where there isn't a current choice. And then lastly, we are going to be undertaking an initiative in the upcoming months around replication and expansion of high-performing schools. So I told y'all we are not a charter management company state. We are kind of a mom and pop state, and we like that. We don't really want to recruit huge companies to come in here and tell us what we need to do, but we do want to encourage our high-performing schools under our portfolio and local schools that are doing great work to think about scaling. So we want to provide some support around that, and particularly to locate in areas where there isn't a choice option yet. I think that's all that I have to say, but I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for having
Any
me.
questions for Ms. Hall?
Yes, ma'am. Why are more schools approved by the Charter School Commission than by others?
I can't answer that. I would say my intuition is that there's less pressure on local districts now that there is a commission. I think there's less pressure on local districts than there used to be. So there didn't used to be an option at the state level. So I think it was harder for districts to say no than it is now. I think now they can say no and know that there's another option for families in their community to get approved. Yes.
Handled that question very well.
Yeah, that was good.
Very,
Very
very politically diplomatic.
There's another.
I think it's the truth.
There's another answer, but there's a 2-hour answer.
There's
a 2-hour answer as well.
There's another reason too that, since you have now that you have access to, charter system flexibility and strategic waiver flexibility, that, there's particularly charter system flexibility, open up flexibility for districts to be able to do independent programs. That they were solely relying on charter to do. So now you find for districts that have been go down a little bit on the charter school side, that they have to be more strategic about using those charter schools to really plug in places our programs that they don't have.
Ms. Taylor, could
Yeah.
you stand up so we can
I'm
hear
sorry.
you?
Repeating that answer so those who are.
I'm sorry. What I was saying was another reason too is that with the implementation of charter system and strategic waiver system flexibility options at the state level is when you really start to see a decline in local approval of charter schools, whereby because districts didn't have flexibility to do some things differently, they became more strategic and targeted about then the charter school options that they were approving, and then really using those options to meet specific needs within the district that they weren't able to do even with that flexibility.
I have a the question, and well, go ahead, Mr. Donaldson, ask yours.
Is it possible to go back to your service area map?
Yes, sir.
If it's way, way back, don't worry about it.
This one?
So there are wide swaths of Georgia, primarily rural Georgia, that don't have any, that are not using these resources. Why do you think that is?
I think it is harder to get the infrastructure in place there. And you have to draw from a wider geographic area. That's what we see with most of our schools that are located in rural areas, is they're multi-district schools. They don't pull from just one district.
Yeah, obviously, you don't recruit, you authorize, I mean, but I want to say, I'm pleased that that the commission is intentional about saying, let's offer options, charter options that are not Metro Atlanta, and actually making it, as you said, the bar higher where there are a lot of options, and not lower, but at least making it make it more possible for charter schools to exist in areas that need choices.
Well,
more choices
we
than
are,
that.
a statewide agency, and we want to ensure that we're serving students, or doing our part to serve students all over the state. Like you said, we're not going to ever go into a community and tell them what they need, because that's not our job at all. But we do want to ensure we're not just serving one part of the state.
Yeah, thank you.
To the extent that we can. Yes, sir.
If, I know that in some locally approved charter schools, they started out as a K-5, and then they added grades 6 through 8. Now, I guess, Tiffany, if that happens, is that treated as a separate school? If they go from a K-5 to a K-8 grade band organizational structure, is that treated as a separate school? And my question would be the same to you, Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
If it went from a 6-8 to a 9-12, do you treat that as would you list that as a separate school or just an expanded enrollment within the existing school?
Yeah, it's not necessarily that clean in terms of yes or no. It depends on, as they are developing their charter, what their plan is for that school. So sometimes the petitioner will come to us and say, we are planning to do a K-12 school, but we're going to roll it out in phases. So that may be one school that they're planning to operate, or they plan to operate as one school. Sometimes they'll start as just a K-5 school and plan to just do a K-5 school, and then realize that because of the unique nature of how they operate, they actually want to then expand to the other school options, and then you'll find that as multiple different schools.
Yeah, I think the devil is in the details, I think, a lot of times on that, because if there's separate administration and separate facility, or at least a separate organizational structure, I guess that would determine how you treat that, right?
Correct.
I'm asking both of you, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true with us. We have some schools that it's really what their charter contract says. So
Right.
all these stars represent one charter contract. We have a couple of schools that have started K-5, and then they wanted to have a separate contract for 6-8 for various reasons, but there are some, I don't want to say bureaucratic, but some infrastructure challenges that can come with that too. So that does mean you have to have two separate schools. So there has to be segregation of funding and different things. And they could all be in one building type of thing. But most of the schools that we have are either K-5 or K-8 under one contract.
Okay. Any other questions for Lauren or for Tiffany? Thank you so much for being here today. It's a
Thank you
pleasure
for
to have
having
you
me.
here, and thank you for that wonderful report. And we'll make sure that all the board members get a copy. of
Okay,
that.
yeah, we love being with y'all. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
That was great.
Taylor, anything else?
That's it for us.
I have one thing, just even though it's separate of this.
Sure. I mean, after the.
Yeah, if we can, just real quickly, this is not part of the charter, but just briefly introduce it.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Again, I just wanted to kind of briefly introduce one of our newest members of our team, Rachel Levoy. She is our new military liaison. So, Rachel, I don't know if you want to share anything a little bit quickly about you or what you're doing and.
My name is Rachel Levoy. I am a current active duty spouse. I grew up as a dependent. I have 3 children in the system. So I'm quite familiar with how transitions can be difficult for our military families. So my job is to serve as a liaison between the board and our districts.
Very good.
Very good.
So we're welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. I had a chance to meet Rachel at a panel discussion back last month at the Georgia Partnership. Welcome. Any objection to adding these 2 items to the consent agenda?
None.
Hearing none, that'll be done. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.
And Butch's appointment has been